A Day and a Life. Chapter 18. Colin can hardly believe how much of a dog's body a postulant has to be. Having been settled in no particular obedience, it sometimes feels as though 31 men share a consensus view that he obviously has nothing to do. Every request is courteously made, but firmly, nothing diffident or shy. Colin, could you just take this laundry list across to the guest house? Oh, Colin, Brother Michael needs these tinctures I've made up. Are you free to take them down to the infirmary? Colin, of your charity, would you mind running over to the porter's lodge with these letters from Father John? He thinks someone will be coming by this afternoon who could take them for him. Colin, Brother Benedict has sent up some clothes from the infirmary, needing attention. Will you be so kind as to trot upstairs to Father James and see what he can do? Colin, Brother Boniface has hurt his foot. Nothing serious, but I've sent him to the infirmary for Brother Michael to take a look. Brother Conradus will be short in the kitchen getting ready for supper. If you have time to give him a hand, that will be a blessing. Ah, Colin, thank you so much for coming to help me. What a godsend. Would you mind taking this list of things we need across to Brother Cormac? He'll need it before the end of the day, or I'd take it myself. God reward you. I really am most grateful. Oh, don't mention it. Shall I take it right away? So here he goes, bearing the kitchener's list of necessities across the Abbey court toward the checker. As he approaches the door, he hears the sound of conversation within and hesitates. It sounds not entirely happy, has the abbot in it, and he thinks his intrusion with his errand might be unwelcome. It isn't that he means to be eavesdropping, he's only trying to assess what the proper course of action might be. After all, Brother Conradus did say the cellarer needs this before Vespers, and it won't be so very long before they're ringing the bell. What to do? So he listens carefully to the exchange between the abbot and the cellarer, trying to make up his mind whether to interrupt or not. And if not, what to do. I only ask you, this is the abbot's voice, firm and level, because I cannot help noticing the portions of poultry and fish served to the community are becoming smaller and fewer. Likewise, the servings of cheese. Seeing this, I inquired in the infirmary, and I find their special allowance of beef tea has been halved. So I went back to Brother Conradus to ask why, and he tells me it is because less beef is made available for him to make it. Then I went across to the guest house. Same story. Less cheese, but oddly, no less butter. Half the capons they used to be provided with, half the chickens. No ducks, and no mutton at all. Today, when I asked for something to be set aside for men coming home late, I'm told we have plenty of bread, but not cheese or cold chicken. Can you tell me what's going on? I mean, I can guess, but I want to hear you explain it yourself. Calm, kind. Colin can just imagine those steady brown eyes pinning the cellarer in place. He wonders if staying to listen is even more intrusive than dropping off his list and legging it out of there. But now he wants to hear the cellarer's answer. Abbot John may be able to guess what it's all about, but Colin can't. He presumes it must be an exercise of frugality. Maybe the money's short. For several moments, holding his breath and straining, agog to hear, he finds himself listening to silence. And when a voice picks up the conversation, it's the abbot's again. Let me help you. I suspect this is no oversight in the ordering, nor shortage in our own supplies. Heavens, the place is fluttering with pigeons. Neither have you waxed unduly parsimonious. It's that you don't want to slaughter the animals or the birds. Am I right? Fascinated, Colin steals closer to the door, clutching his list and keeping well back by the wall where he cannot be seen by the men inside the small building. He glances briefly over his shoulder to be sure he's unobserved, but at this hour everyone's scrambling to finish off the day's work. The Abbey court is deserted. He hears an indistinct murmur from whoever is not the abbot, Brother Cormac presumably, and then Father John again. Brother, you cannot do this. The obediences of the common life are not an opportunity for men to impose a personal philosophy on everyone else. The brothers need the strength and warmth that is in fowl and fish to stay fit and well. The frailer men in the infirmary need their beef tea to build them up. I understand how you feel about the taking of life, but you know, everything dies. While they live, we husband them kindly. They are fed, they have shelter and space. They do not bear the anxious search for safety and succour of wild birds and beasts. And the fish, well, glory, a fish will eat his neighbour's entire brood of offspring in one nonchalant gulp. They are not delicate in their sensibilities. And besides, even suppose we ate nothing but vegetables and grain, do you think there would be no cost of life? Did you imagine the men in the kitchen treat tenderly the caterpillars on the cabbage, the black fly on the beans, even if you do? And have you deluded yourself? The field mice would all escape the trample of the mowers and the blade of the scythe. From where Colin stands listening, the abbot seems to be talking entirely to himself. His reasonable, persistent arguments meet only silence. At this point, he would give a lot to be able to see Brother Cormac's face. The silence lengthens. And then the abbot again. And what's with cutting down on the cheese, for heaven's sake? Finally, he discerns, low, unhappy, a reply from the cellarer. It's the calves. They're just babies. There's no point stinting our own milk, our own butter, is there? We have it anyway, but surely we don't need to buy an extra cheese, Father. Our cheese, our milk, our butter, our curds and whey, they come at the expense of a calf's death. Bad enough that we sell our own bull calves for veal, Can we not leave it at that and keep a little back for our beef tea? Make what we have go round. Couldn't we be content with what our own cows give, and with things like apples and bread and beans? Colin's jaw drops. Their cellarer is a tough, uncompromising man. Nobody argues with him. His blue eyes, flinty, drill into you like gimlets. But here, and the voice is recognisably his, the pleading tremble of vulnerability is unmistakable. Cormac, I cannot let you go on with this. The abbot's voice is gentle. Colin feels the kindness of it, like a pain. Let me see your order books, brother. Where's the list from the kitchen? With a guilty start, Colin looks down at that list, clutched in his hand, and the last thing he hears, as he turns to go, is the cellarer humbly saying, I'm sorry, John. And there is something in the childlike sincerity of it that moves him more than he would ever have expected. It just catches at his heart. With absolute stealth, he backtracks to the middle of the Abbey court and then reapproaches the checker, loudly humming his part to the Gloria. He treads with determination up to the open door, walks in with the most guileless air he can muster, and then stops, as if surprised, waving the list in his hand. Oh, I'm sorry, Father Abbot. Brother Cormac, I hope I'm not interrupting. Brother Conradus asked me to bring his list across from the kitchen. He feels acutely the abbot's gaze on him as he says this, feels himself blushing to the roots of his hair. But what holds his attention most is the thing he wanted to see, the expression on the cellarer's face. Brother Cormac is not one to dissemble or put on appearances. Colin sees quite plainly the raw defencelessness, still completely evident. Here is a man, he thinks, who would never pretend. And how rare is that? Cormac leans forward, holding out his hand for the list. Thank you, he says quietly, and Colin can see the uncovered soul in his face. He wants to comfort him, considers admitting that he heard the conversation, but can all too well imagine how welcome that will be. As he puts the small sheet of vellum into the cellarer's hand, he remembers all of a sudden something Father Theodore said in their teaching circle no more than a few days ago, that there are times when silence is the best form of love. So he doesn't say anything more. He remembers, just before it's too late, the small bow of respect due to his abbot, and then he leaves. Walking slowly back towards the church, seeing as the Vespers bell will begin to ring any time now, Colin goes back into the conversation he has just heard. Like a man finding himself in a mysterious woodland, walking between the old trees, touching them, marvelling, seeing them sigh and stir, feeling their profound inner silence. So his mind explores the interaction, intrigued and wondering. He senses that he has come across something intensely alive in the overheard encounter. His ordinary life before he came here included a lot of banter and repartee and a great deal of activity. He had his work every day, and when that was done, he would meet with friends and drink in the tavern, one song capping another, roaring laughter, jesting, clapping on the back. There were the lasses with their sidelong glances, finding it necessary to lean close over him or look back over their shoulders, tantalising, and the lewd commentary replete with lively suggestions that followed them among his associates. So much colour and vigour, so much to occupy body and mind in each brimming day. But nothing like this. He could not remember ever seeing a man's soul in his face, as he had just seen Brother Cormac's, nor ever hearing anything that touched him so deeply as the humble simplicity of the cellarer's apology to his abbot. And then the abbot, watching Colin come in, quiet, observant, pushing through his point with the cellarer but never raising his voice, gentle. Like someone putting out his hand for his finger ends to touch and test the texture of an unknown substance, tasting it, gazing on it, Colin explores into what he has beheld, so small and fleeting, so unusual. And he thinks back to his meeting with Father Chad and the conversation with the novice master earlier in the day, the point at which he left, the bleak face, the glitter of sorrow in his eyes, the self-disciplined set of the mouth. Sientem infirmitatem, Father Theodore had said to them more than once about Jesus, speaking of the immensity of those words, which he said could be rendered perhaps immersing oneself in a course of study in what it means to be broken. Sientem infirmitatem, acquainted with grief. He talked to them about it in the teaching circle, where he comes back again and again to the cost of the committed life, the treasure of faithfulness and its agony too, the pain of loving, self-surrender. An uneasy awareness begins to stir in Colin's viscera that if he goes ahead with his plan to make common cause with these men, he will be getting into something deeper than the wildest dreams his life has so far entertained. But if he doesn't, if he backs off, too intense, too serious, way too holy, he will be losing something inestimable that he honestly believes is unlikely to ever find again. Once more he comes back to the utterly humble simplicity of the cellarers. I'm sorry, John. Its defenceless candour makes him squirm, makes him want to run away. He cannot imagine being that open with anybody. And then, behind him, as he reaches the wide, shallow steps to the west door of the church, the footfall of a swift, decisive tread, and the abbot is at his side. "Colin," he says, "did you hear my conversation with Brother Cormac?" Mother of God. How does he know? All Colin's life so far has been a training in expediency. The canny thing to do in response to such a question is feign complete innocence, puzzlement. Beg your pardon, Father, what conversation? Just now, you mean? It's as though he's suddenly in a different place. Not in this open court, bounded by the mellow stone walls of the Abbey buildings, but somewhere altogether less domesticated. Some kind of wilderness, in which the eyes of Christ, only partly obscured by the tangled locks of hair, the sweat and dust, the drying dripped blood, the crowning thorns, ask him, well? Because if nothing else, even if all the rest is alien and new to him, this much is clear. Whatever these men are doing, the basis of it is truth. Anything less, they will detect and discard. He can feel it. The abbot asks him, did you hear my conversation with Brother Cormac? And Christ asks him, well? And he sees the fork in the road, knowing that his yes or his no is not about providing information, but about the giving or withholding of his consent to take this way, to himself be scientum infirmitatem, acquainted with grief. He stands quite still. He looks at the abbot. He hears in his own voice an oddly similar humble honesty as he just heard in Cormac's. Yes. He feels the same raw exposure as he waits to be scolded. He bends his head. Oh, says the abbot. Then I think you will understand it was very personal and intended to be private. These things mean a lot to Brother Cormac. So keep it to yourself, won't you? And that's all. The briefest of exchanges. But when he says, yes, Father, of course I will, the abbot sees he can trust this to be true. And when they walk into the church together for Vespers, the postulant knows that because of this day, something has changed in him forever. Before he was seeking and enquiring. Now he knows his feet are on the road. Tomorrow we're on to chapter 19. I wonder, looking back in your life, if you can pinpoint days like that, sort of ordinary, simple, uneventful days, nothing particularly special, nothing that you'd write an article about or bring to a conversation at a party. Just moments in ordinary days that have changed the course of things for you. Something you saw in somebody else's face, in a tone of voice. Something somebody said or did. Maybe you never spoke of it again, but it is the thing that has made the difference. I absolutely know there are things like that in my life. And sometimes what began as a seed didn't flower and fruit until many years later on. And perhaps it's the same with you. Let's have a prayer together. Lord Jesus, cultivate in me the practice of sincerity, honesty, transparency, making of myself an open book, open to you, open to others. I know that in this there is peace. I know that people can find it, feel it, see it. I pray that you will help me to be honest with myself about myself. I pray that you will help me to be sincere and unpretentious and straightforward, direct in my dealings with others. But with all this, both toward others and toward myself, give me with truth your practice of kindness, because that too makes all the difference. And I ask it for the sake of your holy name. Amen. May your day be blessed. May it fill with peace as quietly as a room fills with the golden light of the afternoon. Peace to your heart, peace to your mind, peace to your body. The shalom of God, may he make you whole.